our passwords to our, accounts or anything. But let's also talk about education. As Lieutenant Governor, you are on the UC Regents Board, right? So
and the CSU.
And the CSU. Okay. So we'll talk about that as well. I have kids, obviously, so I care a lot about education as well. And do you have kids too? Oh, wait, this is like, if it's too personal, don't worry about it. It's on live stream.
No, to high school. High school.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Maybe talk about what the revenue sources could be. I don't know if we have some scintillating things there. Are there things that you want to talk about?
I think all of this, the reopening is probably worth discussing because Monday, a handful of counties, including San Francisco, Alameda, Contra Costa, Napa, San Mateo, are all looking at reopening.
Yep.
So we can talk a little bit about what people can expect and what it might look like and how to get more information.
Okay, great. How about Sacramento? You guys are already in phase 2 there? Stage 2?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Cool. Sacramento's had a pretty, relatively low
caseload
rate of hospitalizations and ICU patients.
Okay, great. Sounds good. We're ready to go. Thanks, Kurt. We're good.
Now, your health, your safety. This is ABC7 News.
I'm Kristen Sze. Welcome to our daily special called Getting Answers. We're asking experts your question every day at 3 to get answers for you in real time. So today, we are very honored to talk to California's Lieutenant Governor. So we're going to take you live inside a restaurant as well separately that's already reopened in an approved county here in Northern California as the Bay Area gets ready to move into phase 2 as well starting Monday. It will be one of our first glimpses of what restaurants could look like here in the Bay Area. So without further ado, our Lieutenant Governor, Eleni Kounalakis, joins us live from Sacramento. Thank you so much for checking in. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Kristen. It's great to be with you.
It is great to be with you. I wish it were under better circumstances. I know you do too, because back in January, you guys were looking at a $222 billion state budget. With a $6 billion surplus and a $20 billion rainy fund. Now it's not just raining, it's pouring. So we're looking at that $54 billion deficit that Governor Newsom has unveiled. So let's be honest here. Who is going to not feel the pain?
Kristen, I think if we're going to be frank, and I don't think it'll surprise anybody watching, but a massive event like this with potentially 18% unemployment, 4.5 million people in California have now filed for unemployment, with stores being closed, restaurants being closed, nobody being able to work unless they can work at home. The impacts have already been felt, and they are going to continue to be felt. So in addition to that, on top of that, these pretty significant, really historic changes and cuts to the state budget from just a couple of weeks ago when we were realizing the benefits of a growing economy and tax revenue that would allow us to do so many fabulous programs, to today, a significant reduction, really, and a deficit, really, I think everyone's going to feel it. Who's going to feel it the most? It remains to be seen, because there is one real hope out there, which is that we can avoid some of the deeper cuts to schools, to healthcare, to programs that for our safety and security, police and fire. That the real hope is that the federal government will act and act aggressively to help states like California to fill the gap. And so we are working closely with the Western states and advocating for this additional assistance. And boy, if you're out there watching and you can send an email to your congressperson or to the administration, to the president, please send the message that we need additional assistance in California. And then beyond that, though, I will say this: even though these this deficit and these cuts are just really staggering, again, compared to where we were just a few weeks ago, we, as you mentioned, have a surplus that we were coming out of. That's going to help us. We also have a rainy day fund, and it is pouring, so we'll be able to use that to fill the gap. The governor has also asked all state workers to take a 10% cut, and he's negotiating with the unions right now to work out the details. So those are some of the things I think people can expect to see.
Yeah, I know those are some tough negotiations for the 10% cut by state workers. How is it going so far with the union? Any indication yet whether that is something that will happen? Because if not, I know you may have to take another step, furloughing people or perhaps even layoffs, which, you know, you haven't had to do in a long time and wouldn't want to consider if you can avoid it.
Well, I don't want to prejudge those negotiations. I know that the governor is today meeting with the leadership in the legislature to try to work out some of these details with the budget. He has great relationships. People really generally consider that the governor has done an excellent job. I certainly think he's done a great job. And there's a lot of respect for his leadership. And I think and I hope that this spirit that really we're all in this together and we have to take dramatic action in order to be able to get through it successfully will be the climate where those negotiations are going to proceed.
Well, but Stacey Smith Dunham, who is watching us right now, says no furloughs for state workers. Is that a promise you can make right now?
You know, really, we're looking at a 22% cut from the budget that was proposed in January to the May revise. We really have to recognize the situation that we're in, and I don't think that anyone wants to hear assurances when we can all see the numbers pretty clearly. Yeah. So again, unfortunately, in these very dramatic economic challenges that we're facing with COVID-19, I think everything's on the table, unfortunately.
And how do you make cuts at a time when you're ramping up services to Californians, right? Just as an example, the EDD department, I know that the need for their call center, the need for you to ramp up the IT system there is greater than ever. That calls for money that California does not have right now. So what are you going to do?
That's right. So in calculating the $54 billion deficit, there are some additional costs associated with COVID-19 that are included in that because we have to look after the health of our people right now in this historic global pandemic. And that means making sure that hospitals have what they need and that in terms of facilitating access to programs, as you mentioned, like EDD, we have the ability to do that. You know, it's important to have programs in place like the unemployment insurance program, which was augmented by additional funds through the CARES Act, an additional $600 a week for those who qualify. But you also have to have people who can administer those programs. And you're right, that does cost money. But, you know, we're in these very challenging times. And what the governor and the leadership in the legislature are working hard to do is balance what we need in order to respond to COVID-19 with the reality of where we are likely to see the budget based on a significant reduction in income into our general fund.
Look, no one pretends this is an easy balancing act for sure. You're balancing public safety and the safety net along with, you know, just the dwindling money. I know the governor is putting more money, not less, into wildfire fighting efforts because we're already off to a pretty bad season. But I want to ask you about Health and Human Services because we're getting a lot of questions in about that. And David in Zarilla in particular wants to know what will happen to funding for services for people with developmental disabilities. Do you envision that being cut in a significant way?
Well, I certainly hope not. again, I think that is part of the reason why we are lobbying so hard to get additional federal assistance so that we can keep those programs fully funded. We won't know until Congress acts. So I encourage David and everybody else watching, go online, find your member of Congress and send those messages in urging the Congress and the president to sign a bill for additional aid so that we can close this gap with that aid and we won't have to have cuts in incredibly important programming.
Lieutenant Governor Kounalakis, let's take a short break on the air here, but continue this conversation over on our live streams, including Facebook Live and the ABC7 News app. Be right back.
In commercial break.
All right, Facebook friends, we're lucky to have Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis with us today, pardon me. While we're on break here, I just want to ask you about tax hikes. It's not something anyone in elected office likes to talk about, but I wonder at this point, are you going to throw your support behind measures such as probably in November, a measure to reform, change Prop 13 so that at least the business commercial properties may be taxed, you know, at a different, more modern rate? What do you think?
Well, again, I think that this week is really the week to take apart the May revised budget and to put all these options on the table. But again, what you're talking about is an initiative that will go to the vote of the people. And I'll tell you, I mean, I think there really is an imbalance when it comes to the way that commercial properties are taxed. The example that's often used is Disneyland, that the rate of taxation of property at Disneyland is back only slightly above where it was when they opened the theme park. And most people recognize that that doesn't seem right, that doesn't seem fair. And there are a lot of cases like that. At the same time, certainly in the Bay Area, you have people who are smallholders who may have one investment property and it may be barely penciling right now, maybe a small strip mall. And now with the additional burden of not having their tenants potentially be able to pay their rent, dramatically increasing taxes on properties like those could produce an undue burden. So I think that we really need to weigh these things. My preference would be to see a stepped up approach that would allow us to phase in changes to commercial property, but it really does depend.
We're going back on air now, so I'll put you on hold here. Eric, how much time when we come back?
7, 6.
Okay, thanks.
5.
6 minutes when we come back.
3.
And that's the last block,
2.
right? And we are back with California's Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis. Thank you for joining us. I want to start with your work on the governor's economic recovery task force. You are obviously trying to come up with safe ways for us to reopen our counties and all the businesses. And here in the Bay Area, most of our counties are going to enter the part of phase 2 that allows retail stores to open with modifications starting this coming Monday. So talk to me about how you hope they'll do it and what markers you'll be looking for to make sure that things are progressing safely.
Well, the governor has recruited some really high-level volunteers for this task force. You know, people are really feeling like this is a time like no other, and we all need to roll up our sleeves and pitch in. And California, being the 5th largest economy in the world, has some pretty extraordinary leaders here. So the CEO of The Gap, the CEO of Chipotle, just to give you 2 examples, sit on this task force. They have been helping and working with government leaders, people from other representative groups to figure out how do we reopen, but do it safely. There are other elements of the task force, by the way, that are pretty extraordinary as well. And whether it's representatives from the film industry, the president of Netflix, representatives from the aerospace industry, and technology companies, people really are working hard to help us with this, because what we want to see is as much economic activity as possible return while not putting people into danger. So we all know that if you're sitting at home and you can do your job at home, you may have been working uninterrupted. But there are many jobs where it's not so simple. So in our phase 2, the first things that went back were manufacturing, where people within those manufacturing sites could work with social distancing and masks and PPE and lots of cleaning of shared surfaces. And now we're getting into some of the places where it's obviously a little bit more complicated, like restaurants, where people are in close contact at their table. They need to take a mask down in order to eat. But we're getting there. We're getting there, Kristen. And around the Bay Area, people are going to start seeing evidence of this. Stores that will be able to open for curbside pickup, and bit by bit, the ability for people to be able to go to restaurants, to support their local restaurants, but for the restaurants to be operating in a way that keeps people apart and doesn't just protect their customers, but also, of course, their workers and those folks who are working in the kitchen and food prep.
Well, I know in Sacramento, you're just a little bit ahead of us, so things have been going fairly well there, I think is what I'm hearing. So fingers crossed for the Bay Area. I want to switch to education now, because as the parent of a child in public schools, and I know you got kids in public schools, these cuts are going to be devastating, because you're talking about needing more resources, not less, to do remote learning, make sure kids have laptops, right? And then if you have to stagger the days, that also calls for more teacher involvement. And, I had Superintendent Tony Thurmond on, who said it'd be great if he could decrease class sizes during this time. How are you going to do that with 10% cuts?
Well, first of all, I think that when it comes to education, the governor has made it pretty clear that as we work to close the budget deficit, the last thing we want to do is reduce the amount of spending that we are spending on our public schools. We had, for many years, California was among the lowest states in the country in terms of per pupil spending, and it showed. And we have come so far in increasing that spending so that our students really had a fair shake with kids in other states in terms of having class sizes that were more manageable, in terms of having supplies and facilities that they deserve. So it's really going to be a priority to minimize the impact on our schools. Having said that, you're right that there's a real challenge, and Tony Thurmond is absolutely right. There's going to be a real challenge in physically getting kids back into the classroom. But there is quite a bit of work happening right now to sort out what kind of creative solutions can we find to get students and educators back into our schools. It may be staggered class times. It may be 2 phases, a morning group and an afternoon group. Certainly, we're going to have students spaced apart in the classroom for social distancing. We're going to have masks. We're going to have PPE, lots of hand washing stations, lots of cleaning of tabletops. So it's going to be a challenge. But I think more than any other part of the equation of reopening, the focus on our schools is critical. It's critical for the development of our children, that they are back in their school environments. It's critical for the parents who feel, or I certainly can say for myself, I can't imagine if I had to homeschool my children. I don't know if I would have been able to. I had two very rambunctious kids when they were little. Now they're in high school, maybe it's a little different, but I think that it's a real challenge. So this is a significant priority, and a lot of attention is being put on it.
All right, Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis, I know the challenge is great, but thank you for giving us an insight of what you're trying to do and your priorities as we maneuver through these times. Take good care.
Thank you very much, Kristen. Great to be with you.
Great to be with you, too. All right, coming up next, we're taking you inside a restaurant that reopened yesterday in Northern California. We'll talk about what they did to reopen, and it may be a glimpse of our future here in the Bay Area.
We are in break.
All right. Folks, we are taking a short break here. Thanks for being with us today. It's a Friday, so it's been a long week, but I feel like we've had really interesting guests this week. And it's great that the Lieutenant Governor was able to join us today. It sounds like they want to be able to retain all the quality education you would expect, but the reality is there is a lot less money, or there will be. So there is strong hope by state officials that the federal government will come through. House voting today on the HEROES Act, which we could send, it's a $3 trillion package, and a good bit of that will go to the states, and that could prevent some of these cuts that the governor is currently planning for. So we'll see what happens. All right, next up is a restaurant owner who's joining us all the way from Placer County, and they've reopened. How do we say the name of this restaurant? Campelli's? Okay. And Ashley Campbell is the owner. All right, I see Ashley there.
Hi.
How's it going?
Going well. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. We're already on Facebook, and then we'll be on TV shortly.
Awesome.
Are you sitting at the bar?
I am on the other side. I'm in the party room right now, but we're going to get to take a peek at the bar shortly. Are we live yet, or can I make an adjustment to my screen?
We are live, but you can adjust, yes, because
Okay,
we're live
cool.
on Facebook, not on TV yet.
That's perfect. This will help us here. Can you see me okay?
Well, I could.
There
Let's
we go.
see.
10 seconds.
All right.
Gonna take
Perfect.
you full.
Leave it right there. We're coming up. Thanks,
All
Ashley.
right, sounds good.
2.
Welcome back. The Bay Area is waiting for clearance to reopen dining in restaurants, but 22 counties across California already have that, so they've moved deeper into stage 2 with strict guidelines and modifications. So Placer County, if you go skiing in Tahoe, you know where it is. It's just past Sacramento, is one of those locations allowing restaurants to reopen for dine-in. So joining me now, the owner of one of those restaurants, Campelli's Pizza in Roseville.
Hi.
Hi, Ashley Campbell. You are the owner of Campelli's. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. We're super excited over here to finally get to do what we do best and serve our neighbors some good hospitality and pizza.
Yeah, all right. So I know this is the downtime before the evening rush begins. So I want to
Yes.
ask you, when did you first get the guidelines on what you needed to do in order to reopen safely?
I believe they were sent out on Tuesday. I saw them Wednesday morning. We definitely had to have a little bit of time to clean up the dining room and get the boxes out of the dining room, as we've all been using it as storage for the most part in the restaurant business. And then we were ready yesterday to open up.
Okay, so how did it go yesterday?
It was fantastic, kind of emotional. People coming out are just so excited to have some sort of little taste of normality, normalcy. It's been so good to be able to be the place that they choose for their first meal out. The staff was excited to be able to serve in the dining room, and we're all in good spirit.
So do all your guests and all your employees wear masks or face coverings?
Yeah, so the restrictions in Placer County, the customers don't have to. We definitely are encouraging them to do so, but we can't make them do it. We have to wear a mask if we're going to be within 6 feet of our guests. So the
Okay.
kitchen staff is okay, but when we're working face to face at the register, we're serving them pizza in the dining room, we definitely do wear masks.
What
I've got
about
mine right now.
Gotcha. Let's see it. Oh, that's
So cute.
That's actually quite a beautiful, fashionable mask, and it seems to cover up, you know, fits around your face really well. So that's good.
I was laughing when I put lip gloss on earlier. Like, why
know.
did I do that?
That's an issue, yeah. But in the kitchen, do the employees who are working alongside each other wear masks?
They're allowed to choose if they're going to or not. As you can imagine, in a really active environment, you need oxygen. So it's pretty difficult for them to do their job wearing masks. And they've been working as essential workers together side by side for the past 8 weeks anyways. So
Yeah.
they're all comfortable doing so. They're definitely not required to be at work. They've chosen to be here, and they're happy not wearing them.
Do you do anything like take the temperatures of employees coming to work?
We don't, but Placer County was excellent with giving us a self-check guideline that we could email out to all of our staff, and we did that. So they have a series of questions that they can click through to make sure that they're healthy and able to return to work.
Got it. And the county doesn't ask you to check for symptoms in the customers. Does the county do
No.
that? Okay.
Not at this time, thank
Okay.
goodness.
I mean, if
That's
they
a big
asked you to,
undertaking.
I was going to say, if they asked you to do that, would you feel comfortable doing that as a host and restaurant owner?
You know, before this all, before the reopening phase 2 started, there was a lot of rumors about what was going to be required of us. One of them was to do temperature checks at the door. Honestly, restaurants are really low profit margin anyways. If we were having to staff additional employees to stand at a door and provide that service, I don't know that it would make sense for us to go ahead and open until things were opened up at a further phase.
Got it. Now, so when people,
we don't have to provide that.
when the diners come in, how far apart do you seat them? Do you have to not use certain tables to keep social distance?
Yes, and this is something that's very particular to your specific restaurant's dining spaces. You're very lucky. Both of our locations in Roseville happen to have large dining rooms that are already pretty spaced out. So if you want, I can take you on a little tour and show you what we did.
I was just going to ask. Yes, you're mobile, right?
Yes, I'm mobile. Let me flip my screen here. Boop. Okay, great.
The magic of technology.
So we'll go to the beginning here. This is this is my husband.
Hello.
The man, the myth, the legend. He's the real pizza boss around here. I'm just the one that talks well. I'm the outgoing one. So when you come into the restaurant, we have a pretty narrow walkway right up here. So we're asking that only one family at a time is actually at the registers. We have 2, and that everybody waits outside for their turn. This is our party room side, and we usually seat about 40 to 50 guests over here. We have really large tables, and because our tables are large, usually we may fit on a Friday night like 2 or 3 different families, like kind of dining picnic style. We're going to definitely only have one family at each table. I did remove one table from here so that I could provide enough distance. But then for these tables, they actually have a partition and they're sitting back to back, and that partition helps us. So we have that one, and then we've got a little one up here on the stage. We do have to close off our arcade, which is back here. So sorry, kiddos, you can't play arcade games right now. So that's a bummer for the little ones, because I think they're used to coming in here and running straight to the arcade while mom enjoys a glass of wine.
Yeah, no, that's a tough one, but I can see how the kids would be gathered around each other, looking over their shoulders, and you would have to clean
it too.
Yeah.
So then over here, we have the same scenario with a very large table for one party. And what we did was these little peninsulas coming off of our bar area. We actually have these blocked off. They have reserve signs, so nobody sits on this one. And that provides accurate distancing from this area. One family could be in this area by the wine barrels, 6 feet away from this family.
Oh, that's great. And you have a happy pizza eater right there?
Yes, we do. And then this table is also reserved for the same reason. No one is going to be able to sit here.
Got it.
But then these tables in the back, they actually have partitions. So that's part of Placer County's guidelines as well.
Got
that
it.
You either have to provide 6 feet or partitions.
So can people sit at the bar right now or not? Is your bar closed?
Bars in general are closed.
Yeah.
Our bar is a very useful tool for us for people waiting for their pizzas. So if I was to close this whole area, then people that are waiting on their order wouldn't be able to do so. So what we're going to do is just make sure that they're accurately distanced. So only 3 people would be able to sit at this bar, or an entire family could if they've been social distancing together.
All right. Hey, Ashley, that was a great tour. I really appreciate seeing what you've done to maintain the social distancing and keep everybody far apart but still able to dine in. Good luck to you. Campelli's Pizza in Roseville. Next time I head up to Tahoe, I will have to stop in there.
We would love to serve you. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye.
All right, we're going to take a short break on the air, but the conversation continues on our live streams, including Facebook Live and the ABC7 News app.
In commercial break.
All right. Oh, Ashley actually just left us. She had work to do, but I thought it was really interesting to see how she was using the reserve signs to ensure that tables in between, if you will, aren't used, so that it's just every other table or island that is populated with diners. Interesting. And also interesting that, you know, she mentioned the kitchen staff, they're not required to wear masks. She says they have the choice to do so or not. So I'm not sure how that plays here in the Bay Area, whether the rules are different here for staff, but I'm gonna look into that because the next step is for the Bay Area retail to start opening with curbside. But as for dine-in restaurant, it remains to be seen when we'll be able to get to that phase. It's not going to be Monday, but it sounds like it's going to be soon. So I'm not sure if you feel ready to do that yet, or if you personally prefer to continue for your own safety to do takeout and delivery for a little while longer. So leave me a note if you have some thoughts on that. Mario says, Ashley, great tour. I thought so. That was a really great tour. And I was happy that the signal was good the whole time too, because as you move around sometimes it's not as good. Mario also said, cannot play arcade games. This is true. That is, I understand that sacrifice. You don't have to clean that joystick all the time. And plus, kids definitely will pile on top of each other to see the game action. Ginger says, keep informing us, the public. We will do that. Thank you for that encouragement. That's exactly what we like to do here. And yeah. Sounds good.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5 seconds, 4,
Going back on there.
3, 2, 1.
And that's going to do it for today and for the week. Thank you for joining us on this interactive show, Getting Answers. We'll be here every day at 3 on air and on live stream answering your questions. World News Tonight is next.
You're clear.
All right. Thank you, everybody on Facebook. Thanks for joining. Hope you have a good weekend.